I'm Sarah Hoyles. On Arts Alive today, a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist knows firsthand about intellectual freedom. He shared his experiences this week in Alberta to launch Freedom to Read Week. Billie Holiday's Strange Fruit is considered a classic. But when the American jazz legend approached her record label, Columbia, about first releasing the song, they refused. The company feared negative public reaction. This runs counter to intellectual freedom. It's a human right outlined in Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It says everyone has a right to freedom of opinion and expression. It's this type of intellectual freedom, or lack thereof, that's at the center of Freedom to Read Week, happening now across Canada. To kick off the week in Edmonton was a lecture by Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Chris Hedges on Sunday evening. Hedges has written for Harper's, Adbusters, and the New York Times. As a foreign correspondent for nearly 2 decades in Latin America, Africa, the Middle East, and the Balkans, Hedges writes and speaks extensively on war, religion, American culture, and the conflict in the Middle East. He did just that when giving the commencement address at Rockford College in Illinois back in 2003.
I want to speak to you today about war and empire. The killing, or at least the worst of it, is over in Iraq. Although blood will continue to spill, theirs and ours, be prepared for this.
Hedges questioned the U.S. invading Iraq, which happened only a few short months before. The American government alleged that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. As Hedges explains, his views weren't well received at the college.
The microphone was cut twice. At one point, most of the crowd got up and began singing God Bless America, and I had to cut my talk short after 18 minutes and then was escorted off the podium by campus security at Rockford College before the awarding of diplomas because they were worried that there would be violence against me by some of the students.
But it didn't end there.
And then this got picked up by trash talk media, and I was lynched hour after hour after hour until I was issued a formal reprimand by my employer, the New York Times, for impugning the impartiality of the paper by denouncing the war in Iraq. I had been the Middle East bureau chief for the New York Times. I'm an Arabic speaker and had spent 7 years in the region, much of that time in Iraq. So this was not so much an opinion as an analysis of what we now know happened, not only in Iraq but throughout the region.
Hedges left the newspaper and continues to be outspoken. This past Sunday, Hedges spoke about the importance of expression.
There are powerful forces, corporate forces. The New York Times is a Fortune 500 company that seek to muzzle you in the service of your own career. And unfortunately, I think too many people give in to that temptation, and they surrender their intellectual and finally their moral freedom as a result. So I think that we have to be willing, and I was willing, to pay that price to protect what was more valuable to me personally, and that was precisely that, my intellectual freedom.
In the days following Hedges' talk, the Edmonton Freedom to Read Week will investigate various angles of intellectual freedom, including music, film, literature, and visual art. On Tuesday, the Beatles and rapper Jay-Z will be at the center of the conversation. That's because musical act Danger Mouse combined the Beatles' White Album and Jay-Z's 8th release, the Black Album. The result was the Grey Album.
Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Ho.
In response, the record label that held the copyright for the Beatles material, EMI, tried to stop the mashup album's distribution. That's despite both Jay-Z and Paul McCartney saying they were fine with the project. Typically, these type of mashups aren't welcomed by major music labels, as it ignores the original music's copyrights. On Wednesday and Thursday of Freedom to Read Week, there'll be film screenings, movies that have been considered controversial.
I give you that international sensation, Fräulein Sally Ball!
Including Cabaret, starring Liza Minnelli. The 1972 film was controversial because of its level of sexuality, with transvestites, bisexuality, and premarital sex references.
What good is sitting alone in your room? Come hear the music play.
From Liza Minnelli's film performance to Chris Hedges' talk, Freedom to Read Week is meant to help Albertans to think about and reaffirm their commitment to intellectual freedom. Just like Billie Holiday stayed committed to it, she got the song Strange Fruit produced by a different label, the Commodore label, in 1939. Since then, the song has been inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame. In 1999, Time magazine called it the Song of the Century, and the U.S. Library of Congress added it to the National Recording Registry, making it not so strange after all.
Here is a strange and bitter crop.
For details on this story, Freedom to Read Week, and more, please visit the Arts Alive page at CKUA.com. I'm Sarah Hoyles, and that's Arts Alive for today.